they say that assisted living in itself will double in size in the next 10 years. Right now, it's already overflowing. Even though we're in the middle of COVID and such, the facilities are really bouncing back very well from COVID.
Welcome to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association, providing benefits and services to real estate investors and rental property owners for over 48 years. With your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group.
This episode is sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB and Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com. Hello and welcome to episode 335. In 2020, the U.S. assisted living facility market was valued at $83 billion, and that value is expected to increase substantially over the next decade. My guest today has a mission to revolutionize the assisted living industry by making it available for any individual to invest. Chuck Bongiovanni is the CEO and co-founder of Majestic Residences Franchise System, with a trademarked turnkey operation that generates $5,000 per resident per month. Chuck, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brian. Good to be here.
Well, thanks for coming today to talk about assisted living facilities. Why don't we start with you just telling us a little bit about yourself and your experience in this space?
Back when the dinosaurs roamed the earth, actually in 1993, I got a master's in social work, and I started a small business, which was helping families find assisted living. Fast forward to 2009, I franchised that system, 155 offices, 37 states. I sold that to private equity in 2018, stayed on for a little bit. And then in 2020, in the middle of this pandemic, I had an idea. And that was franchising small residential assisted living homes. We've been very successful so far. We actually have one of our franchisees is in Dominican Republic, so I can say we're an international company.
Help us understand then, what's the difference between the types of residential, assisted living residential facilities? It sounds like the business you came from was placing residents in those facilities. Now you figured out a franchise system for smaller facilities. Define what a smaller facility is for us.
The best way to look at it is, when you're driving down the road and you see a big assisted living facility, we're the same thing, except we're in small residential care homes. So they're, 6 residents to 16 residents. They're in residential neighborhoods. They're licensed by the state, just like the larger assisted living facilities are. They're staffed 24 hours. They're just a little bit more, closer to home and a lot less staff per resident. So you get much more quality care than you would in the bigger places.
First of all, like when you say they're in residential neighborhoods, like how is that possible? How is it possible that you could have a business running out of a residential neighborhood?
Great question, Brian. There's a little thing called the Fair Housing Act, which HOAs have not been able to stop a residential care home from opening in a neighborhood. Sometimes you have to keep the garage door on itself, so that you don't change the actual, physical outlook of the home, but they can't stop them from opening. And they're needed quite a bit. That's why there's over 30,000 of them across the nation. And I'm willing to bet there's one within half a mile of every listener that you have right now.
Well, that's really interesting because that's kind of a hidden market then. Most people probably aren't aware of it. Can you put that in context for us, like as an investment? Like, why would someone want to invest or have this type of facility in a residential neighborhood?
We have several different paths. Let me go down the first one. The first one is just pure investment. Someone has a home and they want to purchase it and then rent it. Right now people are renting to families. Well, if they purchase a home, they can rent it to one of my franchisees and get quite a bit more rent than they would from a family. My franchisees pay a premium because they know that this is something that, normally isn't done a lot. We have a 5-year agreement. That's what we look for in our franchises. So our franchisees look for 5-year agreements with homeowners. And the great thing about it is they're overseen by a franchise system, which means we're making sure that property is kept up. It's in top shape. So that's one area, that's one option, one pathway we call it for an investor. Another one is actually to purchase a home and be our franchisee. You'd hire staff and we'd walk you through the whole process. We'd get you licensed, educate you on the operations and branding and marketing and all those kinds of things to run a successful business.
And why in a residential neighborhood? Why not in a commercial strip somewhere?
Some of our bigger homes are 16 beds. Sometimes they're in commercial strips, but we like the residential feel. Not every senior wants to go to this big, huge place where they have to walk 2,000 feet to go to the dining room. Many of them can't do that. Many of them aren't as independent. So in our homes, we usually have the residents that are kind of between independent living and nursing home as far as the care that they need. And a lot of them, they don't want to leave their own home. So this is the next best thing is actually going to a different home with a residential feel instead of a big institutional, larger assisted living facility.
And what do you look for then in these homes? Like what makes a good residential assisted living facility?
Ranch style, so single story, preferably with a garage, attached garage, or, a bigger, 3 or 4 car garage, because we'd want to convert the garage into bedrooms. So maybe 1 or 2 bedrooms if it's a 2-car garage and such. So, if we're looking for like a 4-bedroom house, we can actually convert that 4-bedroom house, 2 bedrooms in the bath or 2 bedrooms in the garage. So now we're at 6 beds or 6 residents. The master bedroom is usually husband and wife or semi-private. So now we're up to 7. Another larger room can have 2 people. Now we're up to 8. And then every house has what I call a stupid room, just a room that just no one ever uses. You can convert that also, maybe get 9 or 10 beds out of there. And right now we're getting actually between $5,500 and $6,500 per resident per month for our homes.
You can actually get between $5,500 to $6,500 per resident per month. So that obviously the profit potential is pretty good here. Who's paying that?
The family or the senior themselves. And sometimes we have long-term care insurance that pays it. Some states have Medicaid waivers where Medicaid will pay for it and the family would pay the difference. But mostly it's private pay.
If you're adding all these bedrooms and you're bringing in all these residents, doesn't the city or the township or the municipality have something to say about that?
Sometimes, but the codes are always already established. So, for example, in Arizona, you're allowed to have a 10-bed home in a residential neighborhood, but each city or county municipality has a decision to make how many beds they want in one of the homes. So in Arizona, 10-bed is the rule, but some of the cities say, no, we only want 6 beds. And you can apply for a variance to go over that. Mostly they want to see if you have fire suppression installed in order to go over that allowed number. So in order to have 10 in a city that has 6, you normally have to have the fire suppression connected.
So you might have to spend some money then to put sprinklers throughout the house.
Right. And it takes about, once the home is ready, it takes about 30 to 90 days to actually get licensed by the state so you can start taking residents in. Some states, for example, Texas, you have to have residents before you can get licensed. So it's a much quicker turnaround in states like that.
What do you do about neighbors? Don't neighbors come out and say, we don't want this next door? It seems like anytime you try to do something different, the neighbors are always going to come out to push you.
I've been doing this for like 29 years. And something I've noticed is that usually the neighbors that complain the most are the first ones to put mom and dad in. That's no joke. I remember one time I actually placed a senior literally next door to the family, and the family had no idea it was a group home. They said, we saw cars coming in a little bit, and we saw an ambulance once, but we never knew it was a residential care home. So, again, they can't stop it because of the Fair Housing Act. But I always tell our franchisees, make sure the whole neighborhood knows. It's better to be proactive than be reactive later.
What does that mean? Like walk around, knock on everyone's door?
Yeah, let them know what you're doing. Give them a brochure, but turn it into a positive light. Hey, if your mom or dad ever needs care, they could be close to you instead of being far away somewhere else.
What is the staffing like then? Because it sounds like you have to have round the clock staffing. What does that look like in a facility, depending on its size?
A 6-bed home, you usually would like to have 1 caregiver during the day, 1 in the evening, 1 overnight with another support staff in between those hours. 10-bed home, you're usually looking at 2 caregivers in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, 1 at night. 16-bed, you're definitely looking at 3 or 2, and then 1 overnight. But that can change depending on the acuity or the amount of care that's needed. If you have a resident that needs a lot of care and you need an extra caregiver there, you're going to charge more for that resident, of course.
I'd imagine you have to have someone cooking as well. Are the caregivers cooking, or do you have to have a separate chef?
Yeah, the caregivers are doing the cooking. Usually the overnight person does a lot of the meal preparation and such. And, we have software that helps who's ever cooking with recipes and making sure that they're following state guidelines nutritionally, gives them a step-by-step what to cook and how to cook it.
So when you look at it from a income and expense perspective, it seems like the income can be quite high. I mean, if you're talking $5,000 a bed and you've got 6 beds, that's $30,000 a month. Mm-hmm. What's the expense ratio on that? Like, can you break down the expenses?
With this, because there are some federal trade rules that I have to follow, but your staffing is usually going to be 40 to 45% of that, especially if you're priced right. Food is not that much. Food is between, $5 and $7 per day per resident. Your only really other costs, insurance is about $600 to $800 per bed per year. But staffing is your biggest cost, actually.
So when you add it all up, you're probably, I guess you're looking at above a 50% expense ratio, probably closer to a 60%.
Correct. Yeah.
Because the staffing is already 45% of that.
Right. And with caregivers, demanding more money these days, you have to make sure your price points are right.
How hard is it to find good caregivers to work in these types of?
I had a philosophy for years that people leave people, not jobs, and not careers. So we have an extensive culture within our homes that treat our caregivers like the royalty they are. Matter of fact, we actually call our caregivers resident ambassadors. And we give them things to do, like during a tour when a family comes in, to be part of the team and part of the, looked up to and not treated like you're just a caregiver.
Along those lines, I've noticed in this space, you have 2 different types of people who go into this area. One is the investor, typically, maybe a real estate investor or an entrepreneur who wants to open this type of facility and then builds a team around that. But then you tend to also have the caregiver type person who wants to take care of people. Can you speak to that a little bit? Like, are both of those types compatible? Am I missing a type? What do you look for in someone who's going to be successful?
When our real estate investors want to come in and purchase a home and they want to run the business, the first hire and the best hire is actually a good manager. Every home has to have a manager. And that manager is the person who runs the business. So that real estate investor, if they want to not just rent a home, but if they want to be a business owner, they'll usually spend, I want to estimate about 5 hours a week on the business, with meetings and talking with that manager, making sure things are going okay. A lot of times we have those caregivers that want to be part of the business, but sometimes they can't afford the home. So in many ways, those two, the investor and the caregiver type, meet really well together and create a very successful business. One of my franchisees owns 4 homes in Scottsdale, Arizona, and he has himself an incredible manager and incredible team around him. And matter of fact, he's moving to California because the businesses are running so well in Arizona with that manager. So it's really important to have that key person, that caregiver type, but also kind of a business type on top of it.
I'd like to take a moment to tell you about Green Property Management. Not only do they manage everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area, they also manage my entire portfolio. So I can tell you from personal experience that their unique flat fee management style is worth a closer look. If you feel that your property isn't operating to its fullest potential, then Green Property Management can help you take a holistic approach that will save you money, eliminate your headaches, and increase your net income. And if you're a property manager interested in applying Green Property Management's model, give them a call at 1-866-95-GREEN or visit them on the web at greenpropertymgt.com. If you're thinking of leaving your W-2 job and becoming a full-time real estate investor, one of the greatest costs you must consider is healthcare for you and your family. When I made this transition myself, I found the whole healthcare insurance process to be confusing and frustrating. That's why I'm glad I met Chad Creasy at RCB & Associates. Chad is a professional health insurance agent who helps real estate investors and small business owners understand and choose their best healthcare options. And best of all, his services are covered by the insurance company and won't cost you a dime. If you live in Michigan and are expecting a change in your healthcare insurance coverage for any reason, or losing employer coverage or transitioning into Medicare, then you owe it to yourself to contact Chad Creasy at rcbassociatesllc.com.
Let's talk about your franchise model here, because it sounds like you train people on how to set up these types of residences. and give them the systems to put in place. If I'm coming from the investor mindset, would I then buy a house and kind of lease it out to one of your franchisees? I mean, talk about how that actually works.
That's something that we are really looking for. We have many franchisees looking to be part of our system that may have a problem with the down payment and those kinds of things. So we are looking for investors that want to just purchase a home, help with the changing of the homes by adding rooms and such, and then leasing them to our franchisees. So let's say, for example, your mortgage and tax and all that is, let's say $1,800 a month. Our franchisees would pay $4,300, $4,500, $4,600, paying a premium because they know that they need that home. They know that, extra bedrooms were built, and our contracts are 5 years. They're also renewable. So for the investor, they're going to have a great leasee in there who's overseen by a franchise system to make sure everything is up to par.
That sounds like a substantial profit that an investor could make just by leasing it to a franchisee.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
How does that work when it comes to getting a loan from a lender? Do lenders look favorably on this type of arrangement, or is it something that you kind of have to do a lot of convincing to get that loan?
We haven't seen too much of a problem at all. I mean, especially if the investor wants to also run the business. We are SBA approved, so we can get that loan. Other lenders, same. It's just like getting any other kind of home. They're going to want to know about it, of course, but we haven't had any lenders say, no, we don't want this. We don't want to take part in this. It's really just like renting an investment home or purchasing an investment home.
Keeping my investor hat on here for a moment. So if I wanted to get into this space, but I didn't want to take on the responsibility of the caregiving or hiring the manager, I would basically just buy the house, put in the improvements that are necessary, and then lease it out at a monthly rate.
Correct. In the best case scenario, let us know you have a home in this area. You want to turn it into you want to lease it to a franchisee. We'll find a franchisee in the area. That's the easy part. The difficult part we've been having is having that franchisee who can, buy or purchase a larger home.
Do you do matching where you might have an investor who wants to buy a house and a franchisee who's looking for that investor?
Mm-hmm.
And then let's look at it from the caregiver's perspective. How do they approach it financially, like finding this type of property that's suitable and working it from their end to be able to manage it and put a team in place?
Now, let's say the person who wants to run the business, let's say they want to buy a home. They'll go through the same process as a real estate investor would. But if they're looking to lease a home, then they would hire the staff. They'd work with us to get licensed and all of our systems in the home. And we're an extremely high tech home. We have technology that no other homes have, which keeps us full. Let me give you an example of that. We have exclusive rights to this technology that uses radio waves to determine when an adult brief is wet or soiled. No one has that. And it alerts the caregiver immediately upon any kind of, wetness or anything. We have robotic pets. For those residents who have dementia and we don't want them to hurt a cat or a dog. We don't want the cat or dog to hurt them. So we have robotic pets that look just like real pets and act like them too. We have other kind of technology also that makes it so when the family comes in and tours the home for the first time, that there's no other options for them in the area.
Walk us through the expenses. Like if you're going to set up a home like this, what do you typically expect? And you can use Arizona as an example to buy a house, retrofit it or rehab it, buy electronic pets. What are some of the costs?
Well, for the homeowner, rehab costs are just your normal costs of adding bedrooms. You don't have to do anything crazy. You might have to put a ramp in the front if there's a step up to the door and such.
Put a ballpark number on everything. Like to acquire the house, it's going to be what, 300,000? Not
in Arizona, but especially now. Oh, wow, that's a tough question because it's different prices all over the country. Let's just say a $500,000 home, $500,000 4-bedroom home. You're going to want to add your bedrooms, and of course that could change pricing depending where you are too. But we're finding $20,000 or so, $15,000, $20,000 per room to build that. You're going to want to find somewhat of a newer home because what the state looks at is your width between like bathroom doors so they can get a wheelchair in. But they make those special latches that separate the door from the frame also. But there's really no major like ADA construction that has to get done. You might have to put, again, a ramp here or there, grab bars, but the main expense would be to add any kind of rooms if needed. And fire suppression also if you want to go to the higher numbers.
You're going to furnish it, buy dishes and all that. So if you're buying a 500,000 house, it sounds like all in, you're going to be 550, 600,000.
Probably between 550 and 6. And you're not going to want to furnish every room because the residents usually bring their own furniture. So we always recommend the master bedroom, one bigger room and one small room is fully staged. And that's probably the best way to look at it is you're staging a home almost. You're buying the living room furniture and all the knickknacks around and such. And then you lease it to a franchisee or you're running the business yourself.
Can you give us some demographic context? Like, is this a market that is set to explode? How necessary is it? Tell us what is the background to all of this.
They say that assisted living in itself will double in size in the next 10 years. Right now, it's already overflowing. Even though we're in the middle of COVID and such, the facilities are really bouncing back very well from COVID. What we're seeing is that some states are actually changing some of the laws because they need them so bad. I'll give you an example. In Arizona, there's a bill in right now where prior to this, each home had to be X amount of feet from each other. Well, there's a bill in right now that says, no, they can be next door to each other. That's how bad we need them. California has a bill in right now that they have a limit of 6 beds per home, and they're looking to expand that in a ratio with the square footage of the home. So there are states that are now saying, hey, we're noticing the difference. Of course, California and Arizona. Texas has pretty substantial 16-bed homes. So there isn't that kind of a problem there. But with 30,000 homes that people don't even know about out there, we're just seeing them being built left and right because of the need.
And explain why that need is there.
Well, a lot of the seniors are at a point where they can't live by themselves safely anymore. They're having falls or they're having medication errors, those kinds of things. And, the time it takes to build a big facility compared to one of the small facilities is amazing as far as the time saving. In Arizona, for example, we have about 150 large communities, big ones you see on the main roads, and about 2,400 of these small facilities, small residential care homes. So you can be up and running in a residential care home very quickly with a matter of months. And that need that is definitely out there are those seniors that don't want to go too far from, where they've lived their whole life. So they're not going to fly across the country to go where the kids are. But the kids want to make sure that they're well cared for in a smaller home-like environment.
Tell us about Majestic. How have you set that up as a franchise model? And what are the opportunities in that with Majestic?
Well, again, it's a turnkey operation. We're going to help you with the licensing, all the operations, all of our software, technology, marketing also. So someone could come in and go through all of our training and begin their home and start seeing residents coming in relatively quickly. Now, you're looking at about 60 to 70% occupancy before you start breaking even. You're going to want to do your marketing beforehand and work with us for grand opening and get people to come to the grand opening and start referring residents to you. So you're going to have to do some marketing also. If you're just leasing the home to our franchisee does all that. But if you're running the home itself, you'll be doing that, or one of your employees or such. But usually within the first 6 months or so, you should be at break-even point and making a profit at that point.
Any advice then for our listeners, Chuck, who might be thinking about going in this direction?
If someone is thinking about just leasing the home to one of our franchisees, the best thing to do would maybe just give us a call and say, hey, this is the town I live in the city I live in. What's the opportunity here for me? If someone's looking to buy the home and make this part of their business, same situation. Come to our website, fill out a form of interest, and then we start our due diligence process with you. Now, we're overseen by the Federal Trade Commission. So there's definitely some oversight that we have to make sure that your investment is well taken care of and respected.
How would people get in touch with you or find out more about Majestic Residences?
Our website for the potential franchisees is www.discovermajesticresidences.com. Our phone number is 877-777-7916. On the website, there's a lot of information. Once you fill out the form, you'll start getting emails from us to educate you on the system itself and on the industry. We have a very extensive due diligence process. We don't sell franchises, we award them to people. So we want to make sure that every franchisee that we award is going to be successful. Otherwise, it doesn't help the brand, it doesn't help the system, and it doesn't help the investor who's just renting the home to someone who may fail. So that's why we make sure it's a pretty lengthy due diligence process, but it's produced some very good franchisees.
Well, Chuck, thanks for coming on the show to talk about assisted living facilities, residential assisted living facilities, and how investors can get involved and caretakers can get involved, and about the system that you set up through Majestic Residences. It's been a real pleasure talking with you.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode. I'm your host, Brian Hamrick from Hamrick Investment Group, and you can find out more about me by going to higinvestor.com. That's higinvestor.com. And you can also ask questions and join us on Facebook by going to RPOA, Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast. This episode was sponsored by Green Property Management, managing everything from single-family homes to apartment complexes in the West Michigan area. Find out more at greenpropertymgt.com. And RCB & Associates, helping real estate investors and small business owners navigate the complex world of health insurance and Medicare benefits at rcbassociatesllc.com.
You've been listening to the Rental Property Owner and Real Estate Investor Podcast, brought to you by the Rental Property Owner Association. You can find out more at rpoaonline.org. If you enjoyed this podcast, please go to iTunes to subscribe, rate, and review.